Thanks for staying with us. Now, talks of an expanded government and a referendum to change the mode of government in Kenya have gained momentum since the Raila-Uhuru handshake. The matter has, however, split opinion among politicians. Feasibility of this remains a long shot, but the opposition believes it's tenable. So is it? In studio, I have a governance expert, Charles Kipkulei, to put this into perspective, joining us from our city center studio. Charles, many thanks for joining us. Charles is a governance expert. So is it soon to change the constitution?
Thank you, Ashley. I think one of the things that we need to realize is that we are just from a very long, protracted and divisive election that really split Kenyans, and it ended in an acrimonious manner, which actually required a handshake for Kenyans to come together and focus on the issues of development and going forward. So according to what I think, and the common sentiment out there is that this is not a priority of the citizen at the moment. Changing the constitution at this point sounds more of an attempt towards repositioning the elite through tinkering with the constitution rather than responding to a need that emanates from the citizenry.
All right. And of course, we have seen the split between politicians. Others are saying this can be done. Others are saying not. What are the benefits if it's used? What are the benefits against the current constitution?
Well, the only benefit that I see that can emanate out of this proposal is because it essentially it suggests an expansion of the structure of the executive, where now there is the proposal to create the office of the Prime Minister alongside that of a president, where the president now serves as a ceremonial head, whereas the Prime Minister then becomes the executive head of government and also sits in Parliament. And another proposal is that cabinet ministers are drawn from within from Parliament itself. The only plus that I can see out of this is the idea that for a very long time, elections in Kenya have been about, there is the sentiment of exclusion. Therefore, if we have an expanded structure of the executive, the only thing that can emanate out of this is that there will be an increased feeling of inclusion in any government that emanates out of an election that is undertaken after this amendment is done. Otherwise, as I repeated earlier, there is really not much of a public good or public interest that this legislation seeks to achieve.
All right, and of course there's the issue of presidential to be just ceremonial duties. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, that's one of the problems with this proposal, because the idea of a ceremonial presidency then defeats the whole notion, because you're creating an office that has really, it has ceremonial value but has no it has no strong functioning, because now if you create a ceremonial president, and this is a president who is head of state but not the head of government, in the sense that it's like creating a monarchy. Therefore, when you create a ceremonial presidency, this is only attempting to expand the structure of government to suit the interest of maybe an elite political class which feels that the current system cannot accommodate all of them, but in terms of service delivery to the citizens of Kenya, then this office becomes obsolete, because then if it is an office that has no executive functioning, then the question that begs is that what purpose does it serve towards addressing the needs of the common citizens? And the Kenyan problem is the question that has persisted since independence, the issue of development, dealing with illiteracy, dealing with disease, and the whole issue of development. So an office minus executive functioning, to me, is really an unnecessary necessity at this point in time.
Meaning there is going to be financial implications to this?
Yeah, of course. When you create an office of the president and it is a constitutional office, whether or not it has any functions executive-wise, the idea is that since the constitution creates it, then it means that the public and the common citizen has to bear the burden of maintaining this person in office. This becomes a ceremonial office, which, however, has a high cost of maintenance. You can imagine, for example, the discussion around in the UK, how much it costs to manage the monarchy. The British monarchy is one of the most expensive ventures in the British system, where for them they have an historical attachment to it. But for Kenya, we are only seeing a suggestion to create an office that does not serve any historical purpose. It has no common developmental purpose. It only serves to expand an executive in order to accommodate a larger grouping within the elite, so that we have an election where you have a prime minister, we have who is head of government, then you have a president who is non-executive but ceremonial, and then the proposal also suggests that we scrap the office of the deputy president. For me, I think I'd rather work with the system where we have now, where we have an executive president who is both head of state and government, and a deputy president who also has an executive functioning, and you can see that he has a clear policy duty, apart from creating just an office that is expensive, but as I repeated earlier, has no direct impact on the developmental and bread and butter issues of the citizenry. So we ask the question, when you elect a ceremonial president, what does he do in 5 years' time, within that 5 years?
7 years. All right, and of course, Charles, with all that you've stated, with all that you've stated, do you think the proposed referendum is for the gain of the nation or just for selfish politics?
One of the things that, one of the challenges that we have as Kenya is that we do not have a referendum law. In other more established and mature democracies, we see that whenever there is a referendum issue, it is usually tied as an extra ballot during the general election. So one of the things that needs to be done in Kenya, first of all, is the enactment of a referendum law to ensure that, to cushion against it being misused by political forces who are keen to use it, or misuse it, if I can say, to serve their own elite interest and not respond to a need of the citizenry. Therefore, if really the Kenyans feel that we must have a referendum and that it is necessary, absolutely, then we can make it the 7th ballot. Then we vote for the 6 positions that we have, and then in 2022, we vote for 6 positions, and the 7th ballot becomes the referendum question. But at the moment, I think it is only an idea of a certain grouping within the political elite who feel that the current structure of government is not conducive for them to seize power. Therefore, there is a feeling that if you expand the executive, the structure of the executive, then you, understanding the architecture of our politics, it is that it is regional based, it is ethnic. Therefore, if you attempt to satisfy an extra ethnic interest, then you increase your chances of securing the idea of a political party or a presidential candidate. In this case, it will be a prime minister achieving state power. And so I think the whole idea around this proposed amendment is to satisfy an elite interest, but it is not a strong need that emanates from the common citizen.
All right, Charles, in the current system, the number 2 really does not have a position in parliament. So is there any feasibility of having a number 2 in parliament who can check the government from within?
Well, actually, you see, there is a whole idea of separation of powers and the principle of Kenya adopting, there was wisdom in adopting a committee system in parliament, which then meant that committees and departmental committees, I talk about that, is that the cabinet secretary, who then is not a politician, becomes answerable to parliament through the committee, but does not sit in parliament. We have also the structure of the leader of government business in parliament, who is the leader of majority in the House, which is really serving the function that we need. Therefore, I do not see a need where we create an office where there is an overlap between a political, operative, and an executive function, because then we do not have clear separation of powers. And I think there was greater wisdom in the constitutional process of 2010, where we now moved away from the system where cabinet ministers used to be MPs in parliament, and the leader of government business during that time also sat in parliament. Therefore, that defeated the principle of separation of powers. So the greater principle that we must safeguard at this point is the separation of powers, which I think our current system is very sufficient towards that, and a move away from that towards suggesting that cabinet secretaries be drawn within parliament, and also that the leader of creating this office of a prime minister, who is first of all elected by parliament, then disenfranchises the citizen. You remove that power from the citizen and take it to, you create a collegiate system where now parliament then is given the opportunity not only to elect the prime minister, but also that prime minister then sits in parliament to defeat the whole purpose of sovereignty belonging to the people, and also, very importantly, you are diluting the principle of separation of powers.
All right, the proposal has split Jubilee into two. Do you think this is just a way of the opposition trying to infiltrate into the government or Jubilee?
Well, actually, I don't think that Jubilee is split. There is a split within Jubilee. Yeah. What we have is that after the handshake, the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga, according to one of a leading political pundits in the country, mentioned that it was just a handshake without details. But Raila Odinga went ahead now to move with a blank check in terms of now redefining what the handshake meant. And one of the misconceptions around the handshake is that the handshake meant a creation, an attempt towards changing the constitution to misconstrue the inclusion aspect of it through a constitutional amendment. Therefore, Jubilee, the only pronunciation that has come from within the Jubilee party and the ruling party in this case is that the Deputy President, William Ruto, has pronounced himself very strongly that he is opposed to the idea of this amendment, with the premise that, first of all, it is meant to serve the interest of a few people, which then does not address the common need of the citizenry. But importantly, when you want to question this further, there is no split within the party in Jubilee, because I have not seen factioning around the issue of the referendum. And then one of the things that we need to realize is that President Uhuru Kenyatta has listed his agenda, his legacy project, which is the Big Four, and he has really put a lot of energies, and he said, I'm dedicating my energies towards this. Therefore, a referendum at this point is a needless distraction, which then takes attention away of both the executive and even the Kenyans from development, and takes them back to electioneering, because a referendum includes campaigns. And Kenyans, as I said earlier, have come from a very long, a protracted electioneering period, which was not only protracted, but also divisive. So going into an election at this time, when the national priorities was number one, making sure that the Big Four is achieved, making sure that devolution works, the whole aspects around, in about a year, we have a census that is coming up. The IBC is also supposed to conduct boundaries delimitation. We have the emerging issue of environmental conservation that are really national priorities at this point. Therefore, the Jubilee side of government seems to have set their eyes towards securing Uhuru's legacy and not taking Kenyans back to electioneering period. Therefore, I do not think there is a split, but rather the only issue is that the Deputy President has been more pronounced in terms of opposing this push, on the premise that, first of all, it is not people-driven, it serves no public interest, it is only an attempt to secure, to serve the interest of an elite who feel that the current system does not accommodate them, but importantly, it distracts national attention from the actual developmental needs, which are captured from the Big Four, the issue of ensuring devolution works, environment, and also the constitutional requirements that we need to conduct boundaries delimitation within a year or so, and also the issue that we also need to conduct a national census within a year or so also.
All right, many thanks, chaps. Charles Kipkulei, a governance expert, joining us from our city center.